Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is the inaugural kickoff of Ethically Speaking with Tom Anderson daily, 5 to 6 p.m. It's Monday. Happy Monday. Before we get into my guest and a provocative topic, we need to not only say prayers and have hopeful thoughts, but make an active effort to find Samantha Koenig. As many of you know, she vanished Wednesday evening near the end of her shift at the Common Grounds Coffee Shack in the parking lot over on Alaska Club, Tudor Road, 630 East Tudor Road. Surveillance video shows a man wearing a dark hooded sweatshirt somehow getting into the coffee stand. He appeared to be armed, though it's hard to make out the particulars. Law enforcement say Anchorage Police Department investigators are on this. In fact, I heard from an inside source that federal government officials as well, law enforcement, are helping. Lieutenant Dave Parker, a police spokesman, said that at this stage they're not going to release the video, but they have some people of interest. We have Thomas Dewar with us today, and I'll tell you about his credentials. Thomas, what a sad thing.
Yeah, this is awful. We've been featuring notices about this on our Twitter feed from our union, on our Facebook wall, and put a notice up on our website as well. And anybody who has information about this case is encouraged to call the APD at 786-8900. That's 786-8900. And, you know, your heart just goes out to this young woman's family, and it's one of those reminders that as, you know, vitriolic as political debates can get, something like this will give you context in a hurry that, you know, it's heartbreaking.
Amen. Amen. And, you know, I was in Facebook contact with James Koenig, her father. I think he goes by Sonny, and I've talked to some of her relatives on the phone. Our PR firm, Optima Public Relations, has offered to help in terms of a press conference or anything, and that extension continues if they need any advice or help, and I know others feel the same way, as Thomas just said. His organization as well is trying to help. Thomas Dewar, he's communications director for the Alaska Public Employees Association, which is the state affiliate of the American Federation of Teachers. I work with them often as a legislator, and that was formed a long time ago, 1955. I mean, that's been around a long time. How long have you been with them?
I've only been with them for a year. They are the oldest public employee union in the state and one of the largest. We have about 8,000 members.
Wow.
Across the state.
Folks, by the way, a lot of Facebook action. I think Thomas chuckles probably at that. Pro and KOAN union. If you guys have questions or thoughts or comments, if you want to pick on me for bringing in a union goon, or if you want to say...
a union thug,
That's
if you will.
right, thug. He gave me a pin. I wish we could have this podcasted because I just pinned it under Shannon Moore's Liberal and Proud of It. We're waiting for Dan Fagan's pin. He'll put something up, I'm sure. In fact, Fagan rocks. He has a bottled water here, and we were debating should we keep it, because his lips have touched it. So maybe I'll sell it on eBay. The guy is good stuff, and listen to his show today. We're happy to have him in the KOAN family. Of course, Shannon Moore, 6 to 9 p.m. Directly after me, and I'm a fan of hers too. And we got solid programming as well as national with Dennis Prager and other folks, Laura Ingram in the morning. But Thomas,
congratulations, by the way, on your drive time slot. I mean, 5 to 6 on radio is kind of like Times Square on New Year's Eve.
Yeah, no, that's the truth. Our sponsors filled up quick, so I thought they saw the same merit that you reference. Hey, I'm looking. You've been on the Shannon Moore Show. You've written for the Mud Flats. You know, in terms of Facebook, as we recognize, a lot of folks have written and made comments. To that end, 522-1020, 522-1020. You call in if you have a statement, and I'll read some of your Facebook comments later. Thomas, what are the big issues? And we're going to get into that. We're also going to talk about why you use the word vitriol in another reference, but why there's vitriol against unions and labor. And we're seeing that. But first, legislation. What is big in Juneau that people should take note of?
Right now, from our perspective, one of the big things going on is education funding debates. And you have some very different approaches to that. You have a bill moving through the Senate right now, Senate Bill 171, that some folks, including Senator Joe Thomas from Fairbanks, are spearheading, which would basically raise the base student allocation.
Okay. That's been around for a long time, right? I remember that as a staffer. And
the proposal to do something like that, correct.
Sure.
Well, and as you remember, I'm sure, flat funding something like education is basically a cut once you factor in population growth and inflation. So basically what the governor is doing in terms of education is essentially a cut, and so we're trying to address that and make sure that school districts have the resources that they need. On the other side, philosophically speaking, there's a voucher bill that's moving its way through the House, HB 145, which we are, of course, opposed to.
And why is that? I mean, and before you answer, I think with my roots, with my background, I think to myself, why not support a voucher? Why not support the idea that people can choose where their kids go to school? It makes sense. It sounds American, and it almost sounds like an NEA, NF, or AFT, the different groups are challenging it simply for protectionism to their own turf.
Right. Well, and that's the case that people who propose something like that are making. What the problem is that if you are willing to look at best practices, if you're willing to look at what really works, it's not systems like that. It's not places where schools are pitted against each other. I know it sounds really great in theory to say, well, competition and let's pit school districts and individual schools against each other. And we've certainly been pitting parents against teachers and property taxpayers against schools and all of that. But if you look at places that do a really good job educating their kids, the top of the list these days being Finland, where especially when it comes to reading, math, and science, they consistently rank at the top. Places like South Korea. These are all places that are entirely based on public schools. And I might add, heavily unionized public schools. Because they've made a collective commitment to it. We used to, as a country, be able to do that. We used to say, you know what? We're going to put a man on the moon, or we're going to build an interstate highway system. Both Democratic and Republican presidents have done that. It's not been a partisan issue until fairly recently. And so we believe that something as important as education is something that merits a commitment from all of us to make sure that, you know, the next generation of Alaskans, if we want them to be innovators, to be productive citizens, to be contributing members of society, then they certainly deserve a little bit more effort than what we feel the governor is showing at this point.
Well, I think that battle is going to rage on, and I respect your opinion on that. I certainly respect the voucher proponents' opinion as well, and I think it's something that needs to be vetted out in the committee process, and I think that's forthcoming. When we come back, we're going to talk more with Thomas Dewar. He's Communications Director for Alaska Public Employee Association. And he's got a lot to say, and we've got a lot of salient topics, and we want you to call in 522-1020. This is Tom Anderson, Ethically Speaking. Oh, yes, nice. And we're back. This is Thomas is laughing here. We're both Jimi Hendrix fans. This is Tom Anderson, Ethically Speaking. We are with Thomas Dewar, Communications Director for the Alaska Public Employees Association. He's articulate, he's thoughtful, and whereas I may not agree with him on everything, this guy has worked, as I'm reading his bio here, Press Secretary and Communications Director for labor unions, political campaigns, over a decade. So he knows his stuff. He's been there. He's fought in the trenches. And, you know, today I listened to a colleague, Dan Fagan, on from 11 to 2. And, of course, after our show, Shannon Moore. I hope you tune in and stay tuned, 6 to 9. Shannon is probably, somewhat funded and endorsed and very supportive of labor in Dan Fagan's case.
Well, she's been
maybe not.
She's been a great... she's been a great ally. She has taken up a lot of labor issues. She's done fundraising stuff. She's lent her support to firefighters and, you know, things of that sort. So she's a really important advocate, I think. And really, for us, what this comes down to right now, I mean, you'd asked in the prior segment about the budget battle at the state. There's a saying, you know, don't tell me what your priorities are. Show me your budget and I'll tell you what your priorities are. Well, and we're up against that right now with Governor Parnell. I mean, he's flat funding education, which, as I said, is basically a cut when you factor in inflation and pop growth. The governor's office budget is actually the highest increase of all. It's a 26.4% increase to his own office.
But now let me caveat that it's a smaller budget, right?
Right.
I mean, by far. So 20